Welcome back to the channel, you guys. We had a great response from our Kennedy bag video. A lot of you purchased that pattern. Some of you have already made it and sent me the pictures. Absolutely love it. Today we're making the Hannah long wallet. We actually sell this wallet on our website, but I don't feel like it's a super unique design, so I'm selling it. Down in the description, click that, go to our website, download it, and then follow along for this full tutorial. I'm gonna go through each step and I'm gonna tell you a couple of the variations you can use because you don't have to make this one way. So we're gonna start out by going through some of the tools. So first up on my left here, you're gonna see all of your essential tools, and over here, your optional, except for the pattern, obviously, you need that. So essential tools, you need a knife, you need a 5mm hole punch for the collar button punch. If you're gonna use a collar button, like this one right here, you don't have to use a collar button, you can use a snap. You could do some kind of tuck closure like on the last tutorial we did with the Kennedy bag. You're also gonna need a 1.5mm punch for the holes. The holes can be anywhere from 1.5, 2, kind of at the max, I think. Otherwise they just get a little bit sloppy, they're too big. You need some kind of mallet or hammer, some tape, some thread, and some needles. And then on the optional side, you have edge burnisher, if you wanna finish your edges. You have an edge beveler. You have a collar button punch. You don't have to use this. I can show you how to do it with a regular hole punch and your knife. It's not that hard. And then over here is some optional hardware. It's 2 half-inch D-rings and then some trigger snaps. This is if you want to do a crossbody that's removable. You can always just stitch a strap to the clutch itself and make yourself a crossbody. You can put a buckle on it. Totally up to you. Today we're definitely going to show you how to put it on with the trigger snaps. So those are the essential tools. Obviously you need some kind of straight edge. I really love this guy right here. The reason being is you get to see your pattern underneath it because it's see-through. This is great for doing margins, lining things up, making things are really, really square. You kind of get a square and a straight edge at the same time. You can find these on Amazon or on just even at Walmart. I think they have them in like the fabric section. So those are your tools. The next step is gonna be taping up our pattern, cutting it out, and then putting it on the leather. Couple notes on that, printer settings. So Adobe has this really annoying thing right now with Macs where you can't print as tiles. I don't know why, with like the newest OS on Mac, I think it's Sierra. So I had to download a different PDF reader. It's called Foxit, give it a shot, but essentially you can print both of these in portrait mode. This one's obviously just one sheet, and then this one should be split right down the middle. It doesn't have to be if your printer margins are a little bit different, just as long as the lines all line up, obviously. So first things first, you see a little bit of a margin here. We're gonna cut off one side and then tape this to there. And then we're gonna cut out the margins around the pattern so that you have something to use to tape it to your leather. So this is why I love this clear one so much, is I can line up the edges with the pattern, but I can also check if I'm square using all these other lines. It's actually super convenient. You want to be as precise as possible in this step because it's going to determine everything. It's going to determine exactly how your bag turns out. If you're curious what knife this is, I don't speak French. Well, I can't even say it. The indispensable. It's a very good knife. The blade is changeable and it sharpens up real easy. So here, I'm just doing 1/4 inch margins. You don't have to do that. You can do more. It's just, I found that those work well. And then I'm gonna do some, here on the top part with the curves, I'm not gonna cut the curves right now because I'm gonna show you guys a couple different ways to get your radius using whatever you have laying around the house. So I'm just going straight and avoiding all of those curves for now. I've always said though, I think to become really efficient with leathercraft, you have to learn to be able to like eyeball certain margins or centering a punch You're not always gonna have a template. Some things have to be done by eye, especially if you're doing like repair work for people on occasion. So it's a good skill to practice. It's just eyeballing margins and centering things. And these little tabbies are where we're gonna hook our D-rings to make it into a crossbody. You can leave the hardware off and just carry it around as a clutch, like I said before, but I like having the removable strap. If you're wondering where to get your hardware, I get almost everything from Buckle Guy. It's an American company. It's not the cheapest stuff, but it's incredibly strong, solid brass, and I have never had any issues with it. But if you're just getting into it and you're just trying things out, Amazon has plenty of hardware that's usually from China, and it's usually very, very cheap. All right, so we have all of our pieces cut out. We just need to attach these. So I left this little margin here, so I'll have something to tape this to. I'm gonna make this a little easier on myself, and I'm gonna use some double stick tape to put right here. I use double stick tape all the time in the production of leather goods. It's so convenient, because a lot of times glue isn't structural. Sometimes it is, but a lot of times it isn't. And when it isn't, double-sided tape is so efficient, and it holds things in place while you need to stitch. So there you go, just make sure the letters line up, the lines line up. So we have all of our pieces cut out, and now we're gonna tape them to the leather. So let's do that. All right, so now we're gonna cut out our pattern here on the leather. Just a quick note on the leather that I'm using. This is Horween English Tan in 5/6 ounce. Really like this leather. It's a little bit less expensive than the Italian stuff we get because it comes in full hides versus a double shoulder. So this per square foot is gonna be a little bit cheaper. If you're looking for an inexpensive place to get Horween leather, definitely recommend Maverick Leather out of Oregon. They sell seconds. Seconds are basically factory rejects where there's too many imperfections in them to send to like the huge volume customers. There's nothing wrong with the hides. You just have to cut around some of the imperfections, but you still get a ton of yield from those hides. So definitely check out Maverick Leather. It's a great leather crafter supply place for hides specifically, not so much tools and stuff like that. So I always lay out my pattern like this, and then I cut it into smaller chunks, just going right outside of my pattern. This is just a lot easier when you're taping stuff down. Just using packing tape here because it's clear. It will mess up the finish on your leather, so you really don't want to tape down any portion that you're going to be like actually using. So another option, you guys, if you're gonna reuse these patterns, is just get some cardstock poster board and do this same thing, or you don't need to cut them out beforehand. Just use some like spray glue or a glue stick and stick it to the poster board, and then cut the whole thing out, punch the holes, and then go back through when you want to use that pattern using a scratch awl or like a silver leather pen. That way you don't have to cut out this pattern more than once. And reuse it. All right, we're all taped up. Okay, so the next step is you're gonna punch out all of these little holes. You wanna do that before you cut the perimeter because you want the tape to still be on there so it holds everything in place. You don't have to like hold the pattern down while you're trying to punch holes. It's a pain. I have a 1.5 millimeter here. This is a great diameter for stitching holes. If you want the stitching to be tighter, do a 1, but then it's just a little bit more finicky lining up all of the holes. The larger the holes, the easier this whole project is, but to me, it doesn't look it looks a little more crafty, you know, when you're done. So, roll punching montage. have you guys completely engaged in what I'm doing, if you're liking this content, please like and subscribe. I really like making these videos, and even if no one watches, I'll probably keep doing it. But we really appreciate all the feedback and the comments, and would love to hear what kind of videos you guys want us to make. And also, if you want to connect with me and ask questions, hit me up on Reddit. OpenSea Leather Co. is the handle. And I try and be somewhat active in the Leathercraft subreddit. And that's where I post the videos and new patterns and all of that. We're definitely gonna do a video about the business of Leathercraft, because that's a big question people have, is like, how do I start selling my goods? How do I market them? How did you get started? We're gonna do a full-length video on that. So if you guys have questions for that video, please ask those in the comments, and I promise I will answer all of them in one way or another in that video. Once all the holes are cut, we're gonna go ahead and cut out every one of our pieces. For this, definitely use a straight edge. The tip I give for people using a straight edge, one common thing is, if you put pressure on the straight edge outside of where your fingers are putting pressure down, is you'll get it to pivot, and then you get a very ugly line. So I always tell people, line up your straight edge and then try and only pull the knife back between your two fingers, and then move your fingers. Right there, and you just do a little walk with your fingers. If you don't have a fancy French knife, an X-Acto knife works great. So it's really annoying sometimes when you're doing corners to get the point of the knife to meet it perfectly. It always leaves like a few fibers. But if you take like a hole punch and you put the lines on the outside edge of your hole punch, you can create a little corner. They do this like in woodworking. They'll like drill out the corner and then cut with the jigsaw. So same thing. So you cut that, then you just line up with the line with your knife and then pull back. And then same thing on the other side. Again, going down a line without a straight edge is another skill you should eventually learn for Leathercraft. It just saves time. And so if you're trying to make a business out of it, you really have to be thinking about how much time you're spending with each and every step. Because if you don't, it's not scalable, and so you just can't produce what you need to make any money. And if you don't want to make money, that's cool. Take as long as you want. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with having Leathercraft. It's just a fun hobby. So like I said before, we're not gonna cut the curves. I'm gonna show you a trick for that. Before I finish cutting this, almost forgot, we wanna punch this hole. I'm gonna assume you guys don't have a collar punch, so we're just gonna cut this part, and I can go back and show you how to cut the little slit. I'll do that one, and this is probably gonna be a little small for the collar button post, but that's okay. We can show you how to open that up. So to cut the radius, I have this cool tool here. Not sure even where I got this, but you don't have to have something like this. You can actually just use like a lid. This is from a burnishing agent that I use. So I'm gonna show you a couple ways to do this. You just wanna make sure that the edges of the lid are lined up with this angle and this angle. And then you're just gonna use that as a guide and just pull straight little cuts until you have a little bit of a radius there. Okay, so just a nice little curve. Do the same thing down here. And you can mess around with this. It doesn't have to be this exact radius. What is this? This is like 2 3/8 inch. but you don't have to do that. You could go more, you could go less, you could leave it square. I mean, I think it looks weird just squared, but you could. Just leaning your blade up against the guide and then pulling straight little cuts. And if you want to practice cutting curves just freehand, you can just draw this on with a scratch awl and just follow it. Again, it's another skill you want to learn as a leather crafter, is be able to just follow a line. All right, now I'm going to show you how to make the little slit. So it's really annoying trying to pull back like this, because then you end up catching this edge of the leather. You don't want to do that. So you actually just lift up, insert your blade through the hole, make sure it's nice and straight up and down, and then you can just cut down and pull back. Look at that. So I don't have to worry about cutting that. Does that make sense? Little trick there. That's what you come for, all the tips and tricks. So we're done with this, except we're gonna put the collar button on real quick, and then we're gonna stitch it up. Don't have to use a little anvil. You just want something really solid, piece of granite, cement floor, whatever you want. So this is probably gonna be too small for my post. It is. So instead of punching another hole, all you need to do is just like insert your hole punch, because it gets bigger, it like flares out. If you just kind of work it in there, then you have this like nice recess to push this through. It makes it way easier. There you go. They sell these collar buttons that are screw on. This one is not screw on. You actually just hammer it on. You can use a setter, or if you're just careful, just hammer it on. You don't have to buy those fancy setters if you don't want to. All right, we have to put this on now, because if we didn't, then it would be impossible to stitch, you know, the other pockets, or it'd be impossible to set this. That's not totally true. If we put this pocket on before, like this, we could slip like a quarter in under there. If you forgot, slip a quarter in there and then set it, but you are gonna like kind of imprint this piece of leather, which isn't the end of the world because you're not gonna see it. But if you can remember, just put this on first. Makes your life a little easier. So the first step in stitching, you can use some double-sided tape for this section, but you're gonna fold it up and you wanna make sure there's 7 holes left, because we have 3 on this pocket and 3 on this pocket, and then we have 1 extra one to put the thread over. So if you just line up the bottom holes and line up all the other ones, then you'll be fine. I like to kind of do a soft crease in the leather. I usually do that with like a wooden, like the edge slicker. I went a little bit out of order there, guys. We have to stitch this pocket on first. Ha! Fake out. So this one has 1 hole up above, because again, the thread's gonna go over top of that, and then we're gonna stitch down. So we're gonna do that first. I'm gonna use a stitching pony. If you don't have one, that's okay. So we got our piece here in the stitching pony. I love stitching with the stitching pony. It's a pain not to. If you guys don't have one of these, I can totally recommend this guy right here. I'll put a link to it down in the description. This is from Amazon. It was super cheap. It was like 20 or 30 bucks. Honestly, these kind have broken on me so many times. We'll see if this one breaks. I got a bunch of them because we're gonna be starting classes. But if you don't have one, grab one of these. I also have a video on how to make a stitching pony. So really no excuses. Just get a stitching pony. If you're gonna get into leathercraft, just get a stitching pony. It is a total pain in the butt to stitch hole by hole while you're like holding on to the piece. So typically when we saddle stitch, we're gonna put the flesh side to our left, but because these are holes, not slanted pricking slots or diamond, it doesn't matter. So what we wanna do after we have our thread cut, and again, you want a total thread length that's at least 3 times the length of your stitch run. This is gonna be more than that, but running out of thread mid-stitch line is the worst. So we put our thread through, we make sure that they're even. Then we go left hand through first, grab underneath, make a T or a cross, and then turn that 90 degrees and put it through the back of that hole, the same hole, and then we loop this thread around like that. And that's gonna create a little bit of a knot inside the stitching hole. So again, left needle through, make a T, turn 90 degrees, so it's the other needle going in now, and we loop over. And we just continue that down to the end of the stitch line. You may have noticed I have a little binder clip up here, just holding things together, making things a little easier. I always put a little piece of leather inside so that the binder clip doesn't make an impression on your piece. We're just tailoring these tutorials to be towards like the beginner of the beginner, assuming they don't know anything. And if you know it already, you can just ignore it. All right, when we get to our last hole, to make sure that doesn't come undone, we're gonna backstitch twice or 3 times. Basically, you're just stitching in reverse. When you stitch in reverse, you don't loop the thread back over the needle when it comes back through. And we always finish our stitch line, cutting off, leaving about 1/8 of an inch. And then we light it on fire to prevent the thread from slipping back through those holes. Creates a little mushroom top. And if you can, always finish on the inside so that it doesn't show on the outside. Obviously you can't do that sometimes because you have 2 finished sides together, but in this case we can. So we're gonna go ahead and do the other line now. You can do this one of 2 ways. You can stitch essentially backwards this way so that you're finished, so that your stitch lines are symmetrical, so they're both finished at the bottom. I'm not gonna do that because I don't think it matters. If you're just getting into leathercraft but you've done a few projects, I highly recommend not getting stuck on the hole punch phase of leathercraft. The reason, actually I'm gonna show you, the reason why I don't use holes typically in the stuff that we make is you have to think that you're removing leather, so in this hole there's play, and it's so easy for the thread just to fall out, because if you have a slit, like a pricking iron, essentially that slit, because you haven't removed any leather, is kind of always pinching it. So it's just gonna make the stitch a little bit stronger. Some might disagree with me. I don't have any like data to back that up. It just makes sense to me, like with physics, that you don't want to remove material if you don't have to. And that's how the high-end French stuff, you know, does it. And I think for probably good reason. And I also think it looks more elegant to have the slanted pricking holes versus hole punches. And just so you know, this bottom hole on the front is actually going underneath this pocket there. So your second hole on this side is actually the first hole on this side. I'll make mention of it here that this pattern is for sale. There's a link in the description. I also have the Kennedy bag pattern in there for sale and a couple of free patterns, like a bifold and like a belt template. So check that out. One thing you want to be aware of is that you're not piercing your thread when you go back through that hole. It doesn't happen so much when your holes are big like this, but it can happen a lot easier with pricking holes. The way to test for that is that when you go back through like this, if you just pull on this thread and it moves, then you know you haven't pierced that thread. If it doesn't move, it means your needle's gone through the thread, locking it in place. That's what you don't want. I have a full saddle stitching tutorial. I'm gonna always link it in this section of all the tutorials if you want a refresher on that. All right, so they're all stitched up. So you can see this area matches this area, so this doesn't match this. There's a way to fix that as well. You can backstitch at the beginning, and so it's matching here and here, but that's totally up to you. It's an aesthetic choice. Doesn't actually really make it stronger, in my opinion, up here to have it backstitched, but some might disagree. All right, so we've now folded the piece. Obviously, you just wanna make sure that hole lines up with the hole on the front. Pretty straightforward. I've left the final pocket out because it's gonna be finicky holding it in there without any glue. So we're gonna stitch all the way up to that pocket and then put it in and then finish the stitch line. Not forgetting to put on our tabbies. our little D-ring tabs. All right, so you just want to go through the last hole of the pocket tab, and then we're going to grab the pocket and the tabby and slip those in there. You don't have to worry too much about the other side at this point, because we're going to line that up later. So we're obviously going to put our D-ring on now. So you know what? I don't like 90 degrees, so I'm just going to clip off my little corners here. Obviously, you could be more precise with a knife, but I'm just adding little 45s. So I think it looks cleaner. To be honest, I haven't done it like this in a while. I'm assuming the easiest way to do this is probably going to be to use a little clippy. You're going through 4 layers here, so just keep in mind it's going to be a little bit finicky. All right, so that's the one side. Obviously, just repeat on the other side. And then you're done with the main body. Then we'll make the strap. All right, guys, since I mentioned the back stitching at the beginning, I'm gonna show you how to do that. So basically, you wanna start the stitch line where you want, like, based off of the number of back stitches you want. You don't wanna start at the beginning, because then you're gonna back stitch and then back stitch and back. It's gonna be like tripled up. So we're starting just below the tabby. I don't know if tabby is like the technical term for the D-ring tab, but that's what we're gonna call it. Okay, so we've reached the top of our stitch line. Now we're just gonna go back and continue on down the whole run. And this will give us that doubled up look. I guess I should mention, if you're local here in Hawaii, or you're planning a trip here, we're gonna start offering workshops very soon. So we'll have a page for it on the website called Workshops. You can go ahead and sign up. You can come in and learn one-on-one with me and Luca and Bella how to make one of these things. Okay, we're here at the end of our stitch run. Again, just gonna backstitch a little bit, and then we'll just make the strap and be done. So there are a couple of optional finishing steps, like edge beveling and kind of rounding off the corners. I like to just take a little chunk off the corner. To me, it just looks a little bit more finished. Again, these are optional steps. I just do that. And then we can edge bevel. If these edges aren't lined up perfect, you can sand with just some sandpaper in your hand. Because this is kind of more of a crafty look, I'm not gonna burnish the edges. You totally can. That's totally up to you. It's really easy. You just use water or beeswax or burnishing agent or spit, lace them on there, slick it up. It's like the easiest thing. The first step in cutting a really straight strap is cutting a straight edge on the edge of your leather. Just line up your straight edge. I have this big 72-inch one from Home Depot. It's very convenient. I use it all the time. Again, just keeping the blade in between your 2 pressure points that you're creating with your fingers. So what we want to do here, if we're doing it by hand, I like to use a 1/2-inch strap. You could go bigger. I just think the proportions look right. All I'm doing is finding the width of our little tabby and lining up the straight edge to that. Doing the same thing over here. All right, that looks pretty good. All right, this strap can be as long as you want. You can just throw it over your body and figure out what you want it to be. I'm bigger than the average woman, I think, slightly, but this is too short for me. But it wouldn't be on a girl. But if you think this is unisex and you're a dude, make yourself a longer strap. I'd rock it. We're using these little trigger snaps. If you don't have this size, if you have like a 3/4 inch trigger snap or a 1 inch, make yourself a 1-inch strap. It doesn't matter because you're just gonna be clipping it here on the end. So this width doesn't actually matter. Again, I just like to match this tab proportion with this. And with something this small, you're not gonna be carrying a ton of weight, so you don't need a big wide strap. All I'm doing is cutting the end putting the 45 on the corners. I feel like this is a super simple way to finish the end of a strap if you don't have like a little round punch or whatever. And here on the end, you can do whatever you want. I'm gonna do a cool little X pattern, because I think it looks cool. And by X pattern, I mean, you're gonna just do you're gonna make a square with your punches, your holes. And I'm eyeballing it because, again, it's cool to have that skill. So I have just 4 holes there, and I'm gonna stitch an X on the outside, and on this side, you're gonna have 2 straight lines. And I'm gonna go from the back first. Okay, so then in the front, I'm always gonna go diagonally, right? And then this side, I'm always gonna go vertically. Okay, and then over here, I'm gonna go diagonally again. So you can see that X starting to form, which I think looks really cool. All right, there we go. Got our strap. This is a really short throw, but it's good for like shoulder carry. I'm gonna flex on you guys a little bit. What's up? There we go, you guys. The Hannah Crossbody, more like a Hannah shoulder bag at this point. But again, this can be altered any way you want. You can put a buckle on it. If you don't know how to do buckles, watch my belt making video. Very, very, very easy. If you make this pattern, please tag me. Put it on Instagram, put it on Reddit. Let people know where you got it. I will always repost it into my story. Or if you did a little collaborator thing on Instagram, I will put it on my main feed because I want to encourage you all to make this stuff. Welcome, okay, sorry. We're offering the pattern down on the, I always punch the holes. That way your
It's good,
I got paper towels right here.